Hello, Amy.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you today?
I'm so good. It's good to see your
Good.
face.
Good to see you
I
too.
like you.
I like you too.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone joining us.
Hi.
As always, we so wish we were in front of you, asking you a million questions. How are you doing? Gosh, how are you getting through this time? And that's so what we want to do. But in our attempt to get creative and just serve and just be us and have great conversations, welcome to our fourth episode of Real Life Positivity. What are we talking about today, Amy?
We're talking about perfectionism.
Ugh.
Well, we're talking about what that does and how we don't want to have perfectionism.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, no, I think it's really important. We talk about that in our trainings, and
Yeah.
it's always something that we initially put in kind of an outline of our time frame. That would be a fairly quick thing we would discuss in our trainings and workshops. And there have been times where we have spent well over 45 minutes in that area. It's
It's
just
true.
it's such a huge topic, and it's so relatable and so true for so many of us.
Yeah, and I think we in trainings we usually ask like how many perfectionists are in the room. See, I can't even say the word. It's such a crazy word. And usually I would guess it's about 20%. And I think if we let the conversation hang out there longer, like if we just like let there be dead space,
Mm,
more people would keep raising their hand. People have a hard time admitting it. Then there's also some people in the room who are usually like, "No, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not." But even those people have to deal with a perfectionist or two
right.
in their life.
I
So
like how you reference that. So in the trainings, like even if you're not a perfectionist or a claimed one, you might have some tendencies that you could relate to, or you definitely know somebody. So
yes,
it's a great
yeah,
conversation for everybody.
absolutely. And it's interesting. I think more people come up to us and kind of quietly follow up on that conversation than
Mhm.
maybe almost anything else. I mean, just kind of almost like a confession. I am. I'm trying not to be. So I know you've been doing some research, and we have some like really good reasons why this is a priority in our conversation right now.
Yeah, something that I definitely have noticed, and using noticing in our language is like I've really paid attention to it, and I'm loving it. I'm celebrating it. Is all the creativity that's happening in every home right now, and in businesses, and just gosh, it is such a time to get curious, to stretch ourselves, to learn about ourselves, and the creative component to that is just so prominent. And being a creative myself, like I love it. I'm celebrating it. Obviously, there's so much hard in the world, and I'm not trying to downplay that. I'm just um, a type of person that I have to find the good in things, and it's important to me to do that. And so lately I've really just been celebrating all the creativeness happening. And so the research that I've been doing is I knew we were going to have this conversation, so I'm like, what does that look like if you are leaning into your perfectionism, and it like has to be so perfect that you feel like you're stuck and that you're not enough? That's what we're talking about today, is that type of perfectionism. Then that creativity isn't flowing. And so if you're not able to get creative in your everyday routines right now, I think you might have this, like, I just got a little anxious just even thinking about it. Like you might be feeling stuck or low. There's lots of adjectives we can dive into about that. So the research that I've found is that those two things don't really go hand in hand. You just can't really be in a creative flow, in an onward and upward movement of productivity and feeling good and worthy, if you're feeling like you have to be perfect at everything at every moment.
Yeah, it's like it has a time and a place. Because I've heard you say before, like if you're a neurosurgeon,
Yeah,
perfectionism serves you. So I think of even in that example, like if the neurosurgeon is having to get creative about how to go about
sure.
surgery, would that person would have to step outside of the actual act and look at, be open to ways of doing things and seeing things differently. And I have in my mind the imagining the movie Gifted Hands. I don't know if you ever saw that.
Oh no, I
It's
haven't.
about Dr. Ben Carson, and he was the first person to separate conjoined twins that were conjoined at the head. And it's a really, you would love that movie.
What's it called? I'm gonna write it down.
It's called Gifted Hands,
Okay.
and it's so much about the things that we talk about, and how we live and self-talk. He had a heart, he had a lot of heart, and he overcame it, and his mind and his imagination served him so well. And there's definitely a time for perfectionism for
For
him,
sure.
but without the ability to step back and be open and let himself think of different
Hmm.
options, he would have not been able to serve even with that perfectionism. So
Yeah,
um, I love how we're all wired differently.
for sure.
And so this is like a general conversation, but hopefully people who are listening can kind of hear themselves in it and kind of think, oh, that resonates with me, or oh, I'm like that, or
Oh
whatever.
gosh, I hope that's always true for all of our conversations
Yeah.
through this YouTube channel and also just in our everyday life with people. Like we we love you just the way you are. We truly do, and we know everyone has a story and why they act the way they act and do what they do. So we don't ever want to take that away. We're definitely celebrating being the best versions of ourselves and being authentic. So it's
Yeah.
just an awareness of what it might feel like if you're leaning into that perfectionism right now during this time.
So I have, like personally, I think more than 10 years ago, I was introduced to the tool of looking at things. And I know I shared this when we do training. You're already smiling. You're like,
I love it.
yes,
Share it. It's
it
so
has served.
important.
Yes, it served so well. Like the difference between being a perfectionist and being a person of excellence. And that, let's say that there's a perfectionist and a person of excellence, and both people do 10 things and do nine really well,
Yep.
that the perfectionist will focus on that 10th thing that didn't go well until it just freezes them
Mhm.
and gets them. It's that stuck thing you were
It
talking
is. You're just like stuck in the
about.
mud.
Stuck in the mud. And then the person of excellence will celebrate those nine things that went well and look for ways to grow in that 10th thing. And so it's that growth mindset thing that we so easily incorporate
Mhm.
into our conversations in the education space. And I think what's interesting about setting it up that way is that if someone's just tuning into us for the first time and doesn't know us, they might think that what we mean by not being a perfectionist is just kind of laissez-faire, yeah, whatever. And yet you and I are both so driven
Yes.
and are so intentional about how we do things. So I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit, like
Mm,
that it's not all or nothing.
for sure.
Um, that what does that look like for you? How do you interpret that in your life?
Well, that's really cool that you brought that up because I, we're actually doing a masterclass together. I have done a little preview, but it's Bob Iger with the CEO of Disney and or previous CEO of Disney. And kind of towards the end of the masterclass, he talks about how he uses perfectionism. And I was like,
Okay.
whoa. But I think his language is he's using perfection, but it's how what you just said. We use being a person of excellence. I think it's just a little different of a language.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitions.
yeah, just the way he's defining it, because when he
Mhm.
talks about it, it is he's creative, he's innovative, he's open minded, he's a good listener, you know? So I think for me, I just really do try to just be the best of myself, the best version of myself. And I think the worthiness there it plays a big part of that. So if I set goals and I want to achieve something and it doesn't look exactly like that, I can use grace with myself. I can know that I'm worthy, that there were circumstances, there was, reasons why maybe it didn't go exactly the way I originally wanted. But I do just try to lean into the worthiness of me as a person
Yeah.
and my confidence. And so not having it just have to be so perfect. Because
Kind
that,
of ties back into your self-talk and like what you would say to yourself. And like, I know a lot of times you'll say, and this maybe it's a whole other episode, but you'll say that someone, I don't remember how old you were, like 12 or 13, maybe when someone asked you if you were as nice to yourself as you are to other people.
Yeah, I wasn't.
And you were, yeah.
I wasn't. I
I
was
wasn't either.
was not nice to me. And there's moments where I'm still not very nice to myself, but I really have been intentional about practicing
Yeah.
being kind to me, because
So
I would never do that to anybody else.
yeah,
So why
yeah,
on earth would I do that to me? That's
yeah,
silly. That's silly.
yeah. I think it's interesting how many times I catch people um, talking bad about themselves or how they have done something, and it's the very first time they've done it. Like, why in the world would you be just like an expert? It's the first
Totally.
time you've done something.
Yeah, if you
And
haven't practiced it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it happens about lots of things. It's not just like really hard things. It's little things. And it makes me think about being an entrepreneur. I can remember several years ago, Shad Helmstetter asked me if I liked being a pioneer. And
Mm.
I remember like I was like, well, yeah. And he's like, no, I want you to hear me. Do you like that feeling of not knowing what you're doing? And I'm like, I don't know. And I had to sit with it for a long time because he followed that up with, because if you don't, you should go get a job. You should go work for someone else. This is not ever going to make sense before it unfolds because it doesn't exist yet. And so I actually have a wagon wheel that hangs, well, it's in my window in my office because I really need to remember that pioneers don't have a trail already blazed for them. And so there's just no way that I should judge myself like I do. But man, I do that sometimes, especially if I'm feeling tired and vulnerable. And right now there's so much going on that can kind of make me feel that way in moments. So
Absolutely. So what you're saying is we're all pioneering right now.
we're all pioneering right now.
Wow. And thank
Yeah.
you for being such a good example that that's a safe path, because you've done that. You really have. You've pioneered, and you're doing it, and you are a person of excellence. It's exciting. But you've also claimed that you're a recovered perfectionist. So
Yes,
you're going
ma'am.
to talk about that for a second?
It's like recovered anything else. My neural pathways were really worn. I had big superhighways there. And I think that looks different for everybody, but I think that's relatable.
Yeah,
Certain things would trigger me, and I would just, like you said, be hard on myself or talk to myself in a way I would never talk to anyone else.
sure.
Um, Mostly, I think that has to do with that feeling of enoughness, that worthiness. If I start to question those things, is the work I'm doing enough, or does it look cool enough, or does somebody think less of me than I want them to? All that stuff that I wish I was like, I don't know. There's a part of me that wishes I was like transcended or enlightened or whatever, and I didn't have to feel all those things. And then there's a reality to the fact that I want to connect with
Absolutely.
people.
Yeah,
And
that feeling and that
yeah,
humility and that wanting to serve, that's you. That's a really precious part of you.
and
So
that's people. We're all kind of doing that. And I think we can have a tendency to look at, mm, I don't know if this is true or there's just a lot of conversation around this, but kind of look at people's highlight reels or look at other people and think surely they don't, you know, worry like I do about what people think, or aren't as hard on themselves, or are better than me, or whatever that is. And I hope that today with this conversation, it's more of an invitation to just kind of
mhm.
take a deep breath, whew, and just genuinely give ourselves permission to celebrate the things we're doing that are good,
Yeah,
and be okay with the fact that we're going to look for ways to grow the things that we want to do even better,
love that.
and not be mean to ourselves.
It's so good.
Yeah. I know as a mom, um and my kids are going to probably watch this and be like, really? But I wish I could have recovered from perfectionism earlier,
Mm.
because some of that got translated to my kids via osmosis. And especially, like, I look at Carly, I remember Carly's my oldest. She spent the most time with me before recovery, so from perfectionism. And so She has a lot of perfectionistic qualities, and it allows her to be an amazing musician.
Mm-hmm.
It allows her to do things with excellence that blow me away. And yet I know that there's times where it frustrates her, stops her, and I hate that. I wish that I hadn't passed that on to her. Um, but I remember when she was about, she would have been about 13, and Kristen, who was turning 6, was having a birthday party, and
Mm-hmm.
Carly made some T-shirts for all the little girls that were coming to the party, and then they were going to paint their T-shirts. And so she
Cute.
was just writing their names on them. And she brought me Kristen's T-shirt, and I remember the look on her face, and you can probably imagine this, like thinking of your own kids or people you love. She just looked so disappointed and embarrassed and sad. And she said, I messed it up and I ruined it. And I said, it's okay. We'll go get another one. It's okay. And I just wanted to like ease her pain, you know? And then I unfolded the shirt and I couldn't tell where she messed it up.
Mm-mm.
And I
Yep.
thought,
I
oh
knew that was coming.
no,
I knew that was coming.
shoot, like I passed this on to her and she could explain to me exactly where it was messed up. And I think that's another piece of perfectionism, is that whoever's experiencing it, it feels very real. It
Mhm.
feels very much like, of course this is a mess. And it's hard
Absolutely.
to like push grace in there, but there's room for it.
Again, because that's your perspective, and that was her setting those goals, and she wanted
Yeah.
it to be a certain way, and she did want to be a person of excellence. But I think the biggest takeaway maybe we could offer today was just to be aware of it, to be aware of like how you're navigating your life right now, and what's your language, what's your internal dialogue, are you being kind to yourself, and just the awareness of the difference of being a perfectionist versus being a person of excellence. Like that really has served me in so many ways, like just having this dialogue with you over the years and being able to help teach that and to practice it, it really does make a difference. It kind of just, it's, you can still have crazy drive and you can still push yourself, but you don't have to be a jerk. And it if you lower the expectation of perfect to just, this is good, or whatever the outcome is, I think that might be a good tool or takeaway. What do you think for a call to action today?
I think it's a great thing. And I think if um, there's one thing that I like kind of connect with that, it's how you talk about people catching their self-talk.
Mhm.
If they think something mean, like what they can do with that. So I don't know, is that a, can you
Oh,
say that?
absolutely. So I have to say, I learned a great word picture through our dear friend Kelly Lee. She is the director of Camp Encourage. And oh my gosh, if you're looking for a nonprofit to donate to, please, please, please consider Camp Encourage. By the way, we love them. There's so many companies we could plug, but Kelly Lee says it this way: if you are listening to some music, right? You got your Spotify going. I can feel the tunes, and I'm listening to this great song, whether it's radio, Spotify, Pandora, whatever you're listening to, and you love the song, right? You're jamming out. And then the next song comes on and you're like, oh, oh, ew, I don't like that song, right? So what would you do? Most people, you're gonna swipe, you're gonna skip, you're gonna change the channel. It's just what we do because we have choices. We have options. So a well mind can choose to change the channel, right? Same thing with self talk. If you are doing something new, doing something old, doing something uncomfortable, something easy, whatever it is, whatever that self talk is, if it's in a groove, it's in a rhythm, it feels good, it feels right, it's your favorite, you're rocking it, and then all of a sudden there's a negative thought or something scary or something really hard. What I try to do is I try to acknowledge it and then I change the channel when I'm ready to choose that.
So especially related to perfectionism, if someone catches themselves like beating themselves up over something that they don't feel like they did well enough,
Yeah,
do you think that would work there? Just
I
like,
really do.
I'm going to acknowledge that and change that to,
Yeah,
I have room to grow here, or
I'm just
it doesn't
learning
have to
this.
be perfect for me to
Right.
be worthy.
And I think there's a testament too, before we go, that this could be something that you've practiced over and over and over. I mean,
Yeah.
we are going to wrap up this conversation, but there's a cool article about Patrick Mahomes and how he practices being a person of excellence versus being a perfectionist. And you can look at our Super Bowl game. If you're in the Kansas City area tuning in, you know what I'm talking about. Most people watch Super Bowl anyway, no matter where you are, but he did not have a perfect game.
No,
But he just kept going and he kept pushing, and my dog's sneezing. Hi, sweetie.
I love it.
But anyway, he's just being the best version of himself and didn't give up and just kept going. And he knows how to throw the ball, and everybody knows what they're supposed to do. There's just lots of elements there. So sometimes we can control him and sometimes we can't.
I love that he was willing to share kind of his perception on that and what, his thoughts, and that article you're referring to.
Yeah,
It'd be cool if we could find that, to put that on our resource page.
I think we
And
should.
we'll see if we can find that. But because I think it's been so relatable to students, staff, and families, as we've had that example, to really look to somebody who we all got behind, and
Such a
really
great.
can celebrate his greatness. But to hold him to perfectionism would be stupid, because he's human, and it was
Totally.
never the objective in the first place. I'm not sure why we ever thought that. So
So true.
what a great conversation. I just appreciate so
Yeah.
much being able to take a little nugget of a topic and go deeper with it with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you all for tuning in. Thanks for being you and just being a person of excellence.
Love it.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.